How do you guys think this ought to be handled? Just one article at a time? What's the general consensus here? How you guys want to go about this? Or
Don and Mark, do you want to kind of go over kind of what's the how you explain what the planning commission did and then what the, I don't know, you guys want every detail of the solar regulations or high level overview with questions?
I think what you should do is take one page at a time, look at it. If you got a question, ask it, we'll answer it and flip it to the next page. That way nothing's missed.
sounds like a good idea. I kind of thought a little bit that way too.
Yep.
Well, we got page one up, guys, I guess. Anything you guys, Mark or Don, you want to bring forward that you'd like to bring forward?
I'd prefer just to answer your questions or your concerns.
Well, I think page one is pretty, just it. I mean, there's nothing to it except it's just giving definitions and purposes.
Yeah.
That's been,
26-102, item 2, just to make sure I understand this, and everybody does. CWEX zoning district has to do with the unzoned areas, doesn't it?
Correct. Yeah, that's the,
I just-
otherwise known as the unzoned area. It's actually zoned
Just want
CWIX.
to clarify.
Yep.
that. Okay.
It's only zoned for wind.
Page 2,
26.2.
item 12. 26-2. Why are we excluding a guest house? Is there a reason for that? Because there's people will go live there and there may be a hunting lodge. There might not be something else. I'm just, that's occupied a fair share of the time.
We,
Just curious why the guest house was in, it shall not include a guest house.
we've got several Airbnbs in the area, and they'll be occupied like any other house. Well, I'd say it's a good question.
The thinking behind it was a guest house is in other words, an accessory dwelling unit. So you have a principal dwelling unit on the property, and then a guest house is an accessory dwelling unit. It's made for temporary guests, people that reside on the property, and so this guest house isn't going to be something that's lived in all the time. And so we felt like, well, you can't just have a guest house on the property and then count that as far as a principal building, because you're going to have a primary. We're more interested in the primary residence than just a guest house that's located within a shed or a small accessory building.
I just wondered if
There are,
that could be deleted and if that's a possibility. I could bring that up for discussion, okay? Because I think there is some Airbnbs and some hunting lodges and stuff that are not full-time used, but quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
well, and then you got the other thing, how are you treating a second house on a property that somebody's actually living in full-time then? Is that considered a principal building also, even though it's on the same property?
Correct. Yeah, that'd be considered a principal building. Those legal non-conforming second dwellings on properties would be considered a principal building at that point.
Mm-hmm.
so like would Airbnb would be a principal building?
Not unless you're living in it full time.
If somebody's renting out a house as an Airbnb, that would be a principal building. We're the guest house we're talking about. A shed that was converted into living space for temporary use. Yeah.
Do we have a definition then in here regarding a guest house that would include those things?
No, but the guest house is included in the regular zoning regulations of what that is. Not within this article, but within the actual zoning regulations.
So it's included somewhere else.
Yes, yes, the definition is.
Is item 13 a 100-year flood? The 1%?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a definition we added just last month to clarify. When you say floodplain, you have 500-year floodplain, 100-year floodplain, and properties that are outside of the 500 years. So this clarifies what we're talking about.
100-year flood.
100-year flood. The 1% chance is the technical term that you should be using, but yes, everybody knows it by the 100-year
I'm
flood.
not used to these techniques.
I apologize.
Three? 26.3? Everybody happy with 26.2?
Yeah, as long as you go by your definitions of a guest house, okay?
Yes.
Just explained here.
Right.
So I take it number two then, if they're gonna expand, it's like a whole new applications required and the way I read this, an application for a conditional use permit for an expansion of a commercial solar energy system beyond the area previously approved by the conditional use permit. And we're under the major article of circumstances require an application for commercial solar. So phase two or whatever you're gonna call it, phase three needs a new application. It can't just tag on the tails of the last.
That's correct. Yep, so when a conditional use permit is approved, they are subject to the requirements of whatever they applied for. Any expansion would require a new conditional use permit, new public hearing.
If they applied to put in a couple hundred acres and they did that in a couple different timeframes, that's all within that scope of that. Anything outside of their initial plan would be another,
Outside of the 100 acres.
outside of what the initial design of plan was.
Okay. So if they're gonna make any substantial changes, the way I read B, just make sure I'm thinking right. If they're gonna make substantial changes in the number of panels, where they're sited or anything that differs from that original permit, they need a new permit here, the way I read B, right? I'm thinking right?
As long as they are within the lease area, they would not need a new permit. If they want to go beyond that lease area, then a new permit would be required. We gave them the ability to rearrange the
Oh,
panels as long
shall
as they
be
are within.
permitted.
Yeah, shall be.
Yeah. As long as they're within the lease area according to the application. But if they're going beyond that, then
But,
new conditional
but then if they're adding panels, they're changing their original application, aren't they? So,
Yeah, they're,
so you're exempting them in this case from the new application if they want to just add panels within, because you've got a site plan and everything. They've told you where they're going to locate stuff, and now they're changing where they're locating it, the number and what have you.
Probably not really locating that, but maybe the number of panels, smaller panel, bigger panel, or, whatever they decide to use, right?
Well, increase or decrease the number of panels, increase or decrease the dimensions of the solar panels.
Okay.
What I'm reading is that when a actual conditional use permit is approved, it's gonna have the details of those, what it's approved. And if they if they deviate from what was approved, which we probably say exactly how many panels, but I guess I won't know till I see one. But if they deviate from what's been approved, then they have to reapply. What I think is the most likely application I can imagine is, some of these, if something like this happens, they might have the land leased for 40 years, but after 15 years, the original technology they put out there will probably have reached its useful life or at some point, and they might want to repower it, as they call it in the industry, and that would require them to come back with they'd be using new technology at that point, so they'd have to reapply for a different conditional use permit. That's how I interpret it. But if they originally put out panel X and that one gets broken or isn't effective and they want to replace it as they've, in the same manner they've conditionally applied, they don't have to get a new permit, just they put the same thing back out there they've already been approved for. So in my mind, that's kind of the application that they're talking about.
Well, that would make sense to me, but that's not the way I read it.
That's
no,
how I read, because you have to refer back to what the actual, the approved conditional use permit, site plan and Article 26. So if they do things that are approved in that first conditional use permit and site plan, they're okay.
If a conditional use permit is approved for 400 acres, then they have the right to move the solar panels, add to or take away as needed, as long as they are following all their setbacks and the regulations.
Yeah.
right.
They can do that. So that whole parcel of land's been approved for solar panels, subject to all the setbacks and the regulations. And as long as they meet all those setbacks and regulations, they can put those panels where needed
The lease area,
in the lease area.
in the lease area, which may or may not include the whole parcel.
This
Right.
lease area is the only thing that's gonna be approved with the
Right.
solar panels.
Right. So they can't move panels within the parcel if it was not included in the established lease area.
Or really the site plan, because the conditional use permit's
Right.
gonna have a site plan, it's
Right.
gonna say, this is where we are saying it's okay to put panels in this site plan area.
Yes.
So that's the important one.
Which will be within the lease.
Which
area.
would be the same thing.
They may not know if they're gonna give us a conceptual drawing potentially of where it's gonna, how it's gonna orient, where it's gonna go. But when they get out to the site, it may have to be modified for unknown reasons. And so we're giving them permission to do that, as long as it's within the lease area
So,
And meet all the regulations.
and meet all the regulations.
so the lease area could be an area where there are no panels at all. Because if you read their leases, if you've read some of them, they may take 1 acre and put panels on it. And they use that to establish what they pay for rent. But they keep the remainder of that quarter, say they're leasing a quarter. That's still leased by them and considered for their use. And their use might simply be, we don't want a tall tree over here or a tall building that throws a shadow early in the morning. they're using it for space, or possibly they've got it leased. There's a whole list of things. Everybody centers on the panels. They can put substations there, high lines, underground lines for electricity. They can use these facilities. A energy storage system, battery system. They can use that property any way they want. So how we've got, if they are leasing it and keeping it leased, then it's a part of their footprint, and it should be considered that way in my mind. And how is it handled tax-wise with the federal and state tax abatements? What's that going to do to Reno County? Are they going to consider that whole quarter? Because it is leased to them, and they can use it any way they want by their contract. What's that going to do to our taxes? And how are those types of things? Has anybody addressed that or said how that will work?
Commissioner, there's a lot there. So I agree with you in a way that it's important. The leased area is really not what the permitting process is worried about. So that's why I kind of refer to the site plan. So when they're going to lease whatever they're going to lease, and they have legal rights between themselves and the landowner for what their lease says. For the county, we care about what they give us as a request for a permit, and that document's going to include a site plan, which is going to be basically a map. So when you refer to a substation, they're going to have to identify their substation points on their proposed substation points on their site map, and then the county will look at that with our consultants and people when we get to that point and decide if their substations and their site plan meet our requirements and our setbacks. And if they do, we would then issue them a conditional use permit to put things there. But if they then change their mind as to where a substation went, they would have to come back to us and ask for a new conditional use permit because if we approve a substation to be here, that doesn't mean we approve it to be there. They have to come back and make sure it's okay with us to move substations. So that's why I think
or electric lines or you name it.
all the things.
That has to be
Yeah.
on the site plan.
All the things. So the site plan, the lease is important to the landowner, but for the county, we care about the site plan, which is one of the other documents that they submit with their conditional use permit request.
The site plan will be the driving force. Now, the site plan could mirror the lease area or it could not. But the site plan is what's gonna drive the conditional use permit, and that's what they're gonna be committed to.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not gonna be able to go beyond that
Without coming back
Without coming back.
within this 2B,
without revisiting.
coming back and saying, is it okay with you if we move it? And then we'll check it out and decide if it's okay.
They don't have any right to put anything in a leased area without a conditional use permit or site plan.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, these are businesses. They're not, a farmer's not deciding, I'm gonna just make me a solar farm out in the middle of my field. They're using it to generate electricity and get some money. And so they're gonna follow the rules, but they're also gonna look ahead. Hopefully, most businesses do. And so if they need to expand, how I understand this is that if they're in the lease area, that they have a little room to hopefully expand so without every minute they do something coming back.
Yeah, and another way to think about the leases in the county is, a landowner could lease their land for a nuclear station or for anything, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna get a permit from the county that says it's okay.
Like that you do it.
Lease it for a telecommuting. We've seen cell tower leases that we still have to permit those, so it's like that.
And if they show a site plan out of, say, 160 acres, and they're gonna use it for 10 acres for that, then the commission can decide whether that's okay or not. We get the final say on it that way.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And then we'll check and make sure it complies with our regulations and sees if it's eligible.
And if we decide that that's not enough
Yeah.
for the county's time, then you got a choice of approving it or not approving it, as a commission.
Right.
You can have a site plan drawn within a huge leased area, a site plan they bring to us for a permit. And so if that's approved, they can build within that site plan, even if they're surrounded by leased area, they cannot go outside that site plan into the other leased area without another conditional use permit.
You know, on the back of that, it actually talks about everything we've just been talking about.
Yeah,
It has everything.
I think we'll talk about it all down the line.
So are you on 26.4 now? 26.3 good? Any more questions on 26.3? We got all night, Randy's buying dinner, so.
Water, it's a bunch of giant water.
Really no different than any other project you're gonna build, you, your permit, you have to draw it out. That's right, so it has to comply.
Are we on 4 now?
You mean page 4?
Well, the only question I had on 4 was, I see it's at, no larger, no more than 12,000 continuous acres of land. So that's all the bigger the permits get.
1,200,
1,200,
yes,
pardon,
yeah,
1,200.
so
Let's make it big.
that's, yeah.
And then the next one was, there can't be another one within 3 miles.
3 miles.
So once that 1,200 is established, there can't be another 1,200 acres or even 100 acres permitted
3 miles.
within 3 miles of that. What was the purpose of that? I mean, I just,
Yeah, this was something that was talked a lot with the planning commission, and they felt it was important to not have extreme large projects that encompass several thousand acres, which could be a possibility, and so they wanted to implement something where
So
1,200 contiguous acres. You could
miles
have-
and miles of.
Exactly. You could have situations where you do a phase 1 and it could be a couple thousand acres, and you move on next to do another couple thousand acres. And then first thing you know, you've got 10,000 acres, and
Congested roads and farmers are ticked because they
Right.
can't get to their
So they-
fields.
so they felt like 1,200 acres is a good standard to adhere to, and then to avoid that situation of having multiple projects with multiple conditional use permits right next to each other, they enacted a standard of 3 mile separation. And you'll see that with our limited scale as well. In order to prevent somebody trying to do a limited scale solar farm, we have the same type of separation, so somebody can't just go right next to that one and do another project.
That was pretty much agreed on between them.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
And that's a little further north side, I think they did too.
Yeah, I think I believe you're right, yes.
something that strikes me here, and I think we need to get it down contiguous acres. If I owned, they're talking about 2 square miles at 1,200 acres. Just shy. it'd be,
Yeah, right,
have to be,
just shy, yeah.
it's 80 acres shy of two
Right.
sections.
But not buildable.
If I'm on both sides of the road here, and they decide they're building on this section and this section, side by side, you're gonna have a mile line between them. If I own ground on each side, how's that gonna be considered? Because tax-wise, on these township roads, depends on which road, but most of them in Reno County, you own to the center of the road. So does that mean they can develop this and close a road because they've got contiguous ground? Or I wanna make sure we're not allowing them to close roads.
Okay, a road right of way is not a part of the project. It just doesn't separate the continuous project. You know, they cannot close a township road. They cannot build on a township road right of
Yeah,
way.
that'd be so far from.
That's a public road.
Right.
It just doesn't divide a project. So you can have 600 on one side of the road and 600 on the other side of the road, and the road doesn't make it not equal 1,200.
Okay.
But the public road is not a part. It's a township public road. Period. And then there'll be agreements on that, on how that road will be taken care of too. That's another subject later on, which is the development agreement.
That answered your question. That's what I thought it was. Right. On, oh. Interesting, when you go a straight line, if you go on an angle, you're gonna end up with closer to 3.5 to 4 miles. I didn't do the math on it, but, that's fine, 3 mile straight line around there. But if I go on an angle, we're gonna be less than 2 sections. And, I really liked the conversation and I really thought that was good. I liked the idea that 640 hectares or section that was discussed and thought about.
Right.
But, and that's just because you go 2 miles long, looking at wildlife primarily.
Right.
I thought early on they were talking about 600 acres, 640. What brought about the change?
Because a lot of these that are going in are around 1,200 or more acres. Matter of fact, some of them are bigger than 12. And the Planning Zone Commission shut it off at 12.
I know back east, there's instances where the townships are really starting to oppose because of what you're talking about. They just keep adding on and adding on. And a lot of times their tax abatements, if they're doing any significant enough change, are re-upped. So you end up with a governing body that has nothing to tax, or so very little to tax and the same roads to keep up. There's getting to be some pushback from what I've heard and read. So to me, that's size, where it can be, is important on what we allow and what we don't allow. So, but right now, your recommendation is 1,200 acres.
Correct.
And that's what we have to look at and approve or say, no, we need a change.
What's back east, if you don't mind me asking?
Corn country, you read a lot of
Where?
farm magazines in
Indiana.
Indiana.
Virginia's another one.
And there's been some
Push
pushback.
Delaware, it's 20 minutes up and down, 40 minutes across, or vice versa. I mean, there isn't any ground there, I get that, but I'm just saying, depends on where you go east.
1,200 acres. If you put it on a GDP for Reno County, it's gonna be somewhere around $600,000. the normal GDP for the county is. That's an average of pasture and crop. Not that it makes any difference, but I just did some math.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have very many sections out there that don't have homes and stuff on it. We're not gonna build these things in our homes.
Just a few spots, it's gonna have that much vacant land.
Very few. I don't know that there's any in
Maybe out
some
west,
area of the county.
maybe out west a little more, but that's a.
No, we don't wanna talk about west. What page are we on, Delman?
Take about 5, 8.
5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Five.
Wonder if on item 2 there, under 26-107, if you say current minimum zoning regulations, that, should you just put in 1,000 feet there?
The reason it's current minimum is because statute can change.
Okay.
And it could be that some counties, you know, they do half mile. They decide, hey, we want to do a half mile. And so if we say 1,000, then we're going to have to go back and amend the regulation here. So that's why we just say current minimum zone, whatever the county decides to do.
And you've got a list of adjacent property owners that we send electronically. To who?
To me,
Okay, then who sends a certified letter and who pays for that letter?
it's not certified letter, but I send the letters and the applicant pays for that through their fees for the conditional use permit.
And the reason I asked about certified letter, because it was my understanding some people may not have gotten a letter from us on the wind farm thing, and that's why I mentioned the certified
Yeah.
letter.
We just
That
send
way you make
the
sure-
letter.
That way you make sure they have it, they received it, or if not, why.
Right.
So that you know that they've got notice of it. And if they ask, I never got notice, you've got a record of that.
Yeah, we don't send certified for anything else, not that we can't do for a project of this magnitude. We can certainly do something like that, but we were trying to just keep it consistent with any other conditional use permit application. So, yeah.
I would think under this magnitude of this deal, I would certainly I would like, from my standpoint, I would like to see it sent out as certified letter. Maybe it doesn't have to be in there, but that way the county knows that it's been sent.
If I'm involved, we'll be keeping proof that we sent it and who we sent it to, and we might certify it as well. But yeah,
It doesn't cost a whole lot to certify.
we will be doing that very carefully if that, when and if that happens, yeah. Some people don't like to sign for those certified letters, that's the only thing I can think of.
May not, but at least you've got proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy to say, I didn't get the bill. Never showed up at my house.
And with the current mail system,
That's
it'd be true.
Well, if they're gonna want to build a solar farm, they'll probably make sure you get the letter.
Under item 3, down in the last sentence, the document shall state the agency has been contacted by the applicant regarding the proposal, and the proposal has been reviewed or is currently being reviewed. I think that should be striked, because I think you need to know that it's been reviewed, not just looking at, because things can change. And if it's already reviewed, you know the work has been done. Does that
It was,
make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. It was put that way because that agency may not have had enough time to thoroughly review the application at the time that the conditional use permit would apply for it. But maybe by the time the public hearing occurs, or by the time the recommendation comes before this board, maybe we would have that concurrence, we reviewed it. And
That's
so that's
something
why it
easy.
was left open that
To me,
way.
that's something easy to put off and say, oh, I got everything here because it's being reviewed. If it's already reviewed, then you know
Yep.
where you're at.
We're gonna write it towards, make sure that's been reviewed before the permit is issued.
Yeah.
That's,
Cause that sounds like an escape.
it'd have to be done before this board would grant approval, anyway.
So we're thinking that's gonna be struck, that
Yeah.
currently
Now,
partial.
Being reviewed is,
It'll be wrote that we'll have assurance that that's been reviewed before a conditional use permit is issued.
Okay.
Got that?
And item 4,
Yeah.
a qualified third-party company. I think that third-party company needs to be approved by the county commission. And I think we have enough evidence from the last time that the people that came out there would rather sleep than count birds. So I don't think the company should, the company can make recommendations to the whoever makes that decision, but I think it needs to be approved by.
I'm in agreement that we should have approval of who gets hired, they pay. Because there was a whole lot of stuff that went on in the wind deal where, they hired people to come up with the right numbers. And, in so doing,
How in the world are we gonna know who's qualified?
Yeah.
no,
We're gonna have
we're not coming
recommendations.
with our numbers we want. Yeah.
well,
I mean, that's kind of one-sided. I mean,
well, it's one side of the other way right now, Ron.
yeah, I mean.
They proved how they've already proved how they work it.
It's just.
I would leave that up to the planning commission myself personally, because they'll answer for something that happens that's not appropriate. I don't think we have any more qualification, if as much, pick somebody. That's just a ploy to stop a project.
Not necessarily.
I mean, I get it, but I don't know how I would know who in the heck is good enough to do that. I'm not in those circles.
That's part of their recommendations when they sent it us to be qualified.
Then why would we question that?
Because of what's happened in the past. If you don't learn from the past,
Well, I'm not stupid. No,
You-
I understand
you've
that.
got it.
I'm just saying, there's no, you can hand me a qualification, I don't know who they are anyway. So how would I vet that? Any suggestion, Mark?
Yeah. I
You
mean,
could have opportunities because they're gonna give you the information and you can check on it. I mean,
But
just comparing
I mean, that's fine, I don't mind this, but compared to who are we gonna check on that? I mean, we're gonna go sit out and watch birds ourselves and count them or whatever, I mean, I just don't know how I vet a person that I'm gonna do these things right or not right.
well, let's just say things I personally witnessed and other things, you're not necessarily getting a fair report.
I know you shared that with me.
A lot of boxes get checked.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think there would probably be some local firms rather than out-of-state firms that would probably, I would hope would be a little more fair in what they do.
the company meeting.
Sometimes the planning commission
Meeting.
would have a better or a good insight where
They would meet that.
they could make that decision, or
I don't care.
as long as it's someone.
I think it needs to be, we need at least
Well, I'm best people doing it, but I just don't think we're.
The qualified third-party company is defined, on page 2, and that's, I don't know if that helps the situation.
Where, what page?
On page 2, we've got a definition for, it's not just an open for suggestion, they have to meet
No,
the standard,
that
but
answers
yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just in my 30 seconds of Googling, there are, and I would have to vet what the best programs are, but there are national certifications and registries for environmental professionals that we would make sure they're accountable to some sort of governing body that vets that they're doing a good job, because if they have a certification that they might lose if they did a bad job, they're more likely to actually do the work properly. So we'd have to look and figure out which one of those are reputable, but it's
And then
doable.
people
I mean,
on there that fall.
We're looking for somebody that's not affiliated with the applicant, and
And that's just an application, that's not a done deal. Application has to be reviewed, right?
the application.
Yeah. Regarding this, it says with the conditional use permit application.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's not just saying that, if we question it or you question it, then them can be addressed at that time.
Yeah, they're not,
Right.
yeah, it's just one
Right.
of the things.
It's not a sure thing, you know.
And I brought that up just because of past experiences with them.
right.
We've made a lot of changes in this since the wind by learning from the wind.
Not to cover these.
Well, page 211 doesn't cover that. Question? On that third party?
I really don't. Don't want to change it, that's fine, I just bring it up.
No, I mean on the third party, does page 211 satisfy your concerns about what a third party is, or?
It's a definition of what a third-party company
Go
is.
to page 2, number 11.
That's what we had the last time too, it didn't all pan out, so, I mean, that was basically the time before. So I'm just bringing that up.
Still says on there, on that, it says you have to be, who is qualified to perform the required analysis. So if you're looking through, like you just said, they hopefully have credentials to show that they're not just some friend of a friend of a friend who says, I can go out and do that for you.
Right.
So I would hope that with some due diligence that we would, look them over to make sure that they're not just putting their name on a letterhead and calling it good.
What I would expect to see from one of these that would came with an application is a curriculum vitae at the beginning, just like when you get an appraisal from somebody, the appraisal tells you that they know what they're doing, and the front page should be like a list of who worked on it. It's probably a bunch of master's degree people, and that's what I expect. If it's people who aren't certified, then I'm gonna tell them that,
Where they worked before.
and where they
Yeah,
worked, and
job
that they-
references, things like that, so.
You don't want someone,
could make it that way, but, and that's fine, but I just bring out
One, you can always,
situations that were before, so that's something to look for.
you can always follow the money too, where the paychecks come from. So, we can figure that out.
Are we off of 5, where we at now? On page 6, or?
I'm ready for six.
Okay, then.
Myself, okay? I don't know where anybody else is.
I've read this before, this letter, that seems fairly straightforward, I can't see where it takes much deliberation on this.
we could potentially lose quite a bit of good productive ground. And so I looked at, if stated in the lease agreement, I don't know that's where I call upon an attorney on item 7 at the end of that. To me, it all should be planted the proper grass, and maybe that goes in the development agreement, okay, on what type of, and who approves the grass, maybe that's where that should be, but as I read through it, to me, that all should be covered in an acceptable ground cover that wouldn't allow grazing if that's, regardless, because whether it's used for grazing or not.
Do you think the landowner should have an opportunity to say what he wants it at?
I think we owe it, the county owes it to just good agrarian practices to have proper grass on that, underneath that. Am I infringing on property right? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, you are.
But I think I really think that, there's nothing in here that states what kind of grass should be planted, what kind of cover should be on it, except proper.
Determined by the property owner. Yeah. I know, I mean, yeah, it's a slippery slope on
Yep.
what you're telling some property owner what they can have or not have on their property, so.
Right.
Like, we know better what grass to plant than the property owner wants to do with whether he wants to graze or not graze it. I mean, they have to have some input, so I don't know, it's difficult to write this.
And maybe that should be in the development agreement.
Well, the development agreement, then you're taking out the property owner, if the Board of County Commissioners are gonna create the development agreement.
It should be stated what type of ground cover goes on there.
I don't understand the purpose of that for somebody's private land. I'm not gonna come by your house and tell you to plant in your front yard.
It's not a front yard.
But it's not a front yard, but
It-
it's not your property, and there is certain inalienable rights that they have that you don't have over their property.
It's a large area. I'm not saying it should be necessarily grass or whatever, but there needs to be a proper cover because
Keeps
it
erosion down.
changes, it keeps the dirt from blowing.
Yep.
It changes how fast the water flows off of it and silting and various things that affect the property owners next to it.
Well, and these
Or
solar
the-
panels
or
create
a
heat.
lake or whatever down the way. You've got to be careful about what you do with water and how it leaves, how it's retained on the property or not retained on the property. The same can be said. I drove in here and dust is blowing today. You gotta have certain parameters in place. Some of these areas out there, the topsoils are so shallow. If you move any dirt at all for leveling or anything like that, you will get nothing to grow on shale.
My question though, in limited solar, did we put this option in there and tell them what they had to grow underneath that, like Clark Valley and some of them?
No.
Well, it should be in that one, if it's gotta be in this one, I don't understand. I've not been by a facility that I've ever seen it not growing something.
Well, I'll say this much.
I mean, the one on Blanchard's not a very big unit out there, but it's always got vegetation.
I'll say this as to your comment on limited solar. There was a lot of stuff that should have been included in there that didn't get included in there. And we were way too lenient there on a lot of things. And that's why my vote was no that day.
Well, there, I'm just saying, I don't.
Because we don't have the proper rules in place. Just like you said, our pointed out. And that's where we're at. We're working on this today, but I'm sure we should revisit the other one and at least put some basic rules in place.
Well, but if we do that, then, and I'm not one side or the other of this, we do that, then next year I'm gonna tell you what you plant in your field. We'll pass a regulation and say, Don Bogner, you have to plant corn over here and you want wheat.
United States government did it to me for years.
Well, I know. And it's not.
And it was,
it's not right.
it was my
I
property.
mean, I'm not trying to be hard to get along with, but I don't agree with that.
And, I mean, hell, we've been there, done that.
On this subject, to answer your question stuff, it's like 26.6.7 describes it, you know, you can't just, there has to be something to demonstrate solar energy system, you know, stormwater runoff and all that. So that's gotta be addressed. The point is, on the grass, we feel like that maybe the landowner should have some say in what is to be planted
Be
for.
fine.
But yet 26.6.7 indicates that there has to be something there to prevent runoff and all this.
Well,
So,
I mean, there does have to be some.
yes, it's in the regulations.
Yeah, it's there, yeah.
We're just,
And
we're not saying there shouldn't be grass or nothing like that. It's just that the landowner, maybe on what maybe he wants to run sheep on or whatever, he needs to have a say, maybe what's in it. That's all we're saying.
Well, and that's what it says. It says the vegetation plan shall describe how the ground beneath the solar panels will prevent storm runoff and stuff, but
So
it's
some of
leaving
this,
it
if
up
we
to
just
him.
keep reading,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
it'll answer something.
Yeah.
And the,
Question.
you know, I mean, the property owner and applicant get to decide what grass to plant.
Sure.
Sure.
Right.
To go along with something that's similar to that on runoff and on things like that, I have seen in other agreements with regards to solar, that they have limited the amount of percentage of the property that can be graded. And so much of our territory, land, some of it not gonna need graded hardly at all, okay? But there's some of that land that they might go in on, not saying they will, but they might go in on. It's got about 4 inches of topsoil and then some rock or other things underneath of it. So I would like to throw out something that there shouldn't be any more than 5% of the project property area disturbed by grading. You get too much, that 5%, that's 60 acres on a 1,200 acre. That's not confining things much. But also that the dirt that they move should be separated from topsoil and subsoil and parked differently. We do that when we build houses, so that you've got topsoil to put back in the holes when a project is over with.
Well, you can do that on the decommissioning system, agreement, on how that's gotta be put back. That's in the decommissioning agreement that you will create.
I just figured that was close to land use and future land use, that maybe that, but I don't have any trouble as long as we can do it, but I think that needs to be looked at. Because if you grade some of that, you're not gonna have anything to put grass on to speak of,
True.
no matter what kind of grass or anything.
But then 26.6.7 will prevent you from creating something that's just gonna wash away.
Right.
So if that means they gotta grade it too low and then bring back in topsoil and plant the grass, then that's what that means. They can't just go in there and scrape it off and let it erode according to number 7. Now, as far as putting it back like it was before, whatever, that's in the agreement, part of the decommissioning agreement, which is a part of the development agreement that you gentlemen will create.
I just think to disturb a bunch of it is just going beyond and above, because it's gonna be very difficult to control runoff, it's gonna be difficult to plant back. I would like, I know that's, and the reason I got that from another
But if it, when they ask for this permit and you don't agree with that documentation that they're gonna give you on how they're gonna solve your question, then I guess they won't get a permit.
Okay,
It's
But I think it's like
Table.
Don said though, if they have to, because construction, you have to dig down sometimes. So if they end up taking some of the topsoil away, they might have to buy some topsoil to make it where the vegetation will grow and the runoff doesn't go where we don't
Well,
want.
they may have to dig down to the level they want, keep the topsoil and put that back on top and then
Yeah.
put their stuffing, just like what you're saying. That's all part of that
Part of that.
they have to
application.
do or they're not gonna get a permit.
Yeah.
Agree?
I agree. I mean, it's all in that erosion control plan, and if there's one aspect that you don't agree with, then
are you gonna be
you
able,
table.
are you gonna be able to consult someone who decides how far apart these panels are gonna be so that you get enough sunlight to be able to have vegetation underneath of them? Are you gonna require that?
No, that's not.
Some
that's
type
not.
of decision on that?
No, we're just looking at where they're putting the panels and how they're located, not about that, not that specific on the separation distance between the panels. That's,
I guess if they put the panels too close and it can't get sun, it can't grow grass, and it's gonna erode, then they're in trouble.
it would be kind of controlled under that, the erosion control plan. They still need, that needs to go for the life of the project, not just put the panels in and then once grass starts growing, that erosion control, soil erosion goes for the life of the project. So if there's an issue, then they're gonna be in violation of the conditional use permit.
Where would somebody report he felt there was a problem?
It would start with me. It would start with me, and then we would go through that process. We'd look at it, and I'd be in contact with the developer of that project.
County government we do have a right and an interest, we have an interest in these private landowners not causing erosion that affects other people. But we really don't have an interest in county government as to what happens on their land as long as they're not creating erosion that affects somebody else. So as long as, if it relates to erosion, if erosion's a problem, then we need to be involved and we need to make sure it doesn't erode. But if it's, as long as it's not eroding, I think it's on private land, they have a privacy interest that we don't want to go too far in, enforcing.
Emergency response plan at 10, that's addresses what facilities and what part of it are. They've got to come up with a emergency management plan. We know how important after the week that might be. So, what do you foresee that as including?
Whatever the director of emergency management says it will be.
I mean, that would be,
I'd be up to Adam and his staff to come up with whatever emergency,
Because they've
plan
gotta, they've gotta have a plan, is what you're
Yes,
saying
right.
in this.
yes, approved by the emergency management director.
So I'm assuming that'd be fire and other things and possible.
Whatever Adam possibly thinks would be an issue. They'd have to come up with a plan to resolve that question.
So communications or anything like that would fall under this
Yep.
number 9.
yes.
I don't know what you name that, communications, but, I mean, if your radio quit working, I doubt if Adam's gonna do without. But an emergency, that, you know, something
Communications or.
catch it on fire,
Right.
whatever, what's the plan, you know?
Okay.
I gotta take a quick break. My bladder's killing me. Sorry. I'll be right back.
Neck is gonna-
Sorry.
On the seventh, Rob,
Well, I'm,
we good?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I
I'll have to
mean-
get, take a break.
is that all right with everybody else?
Yeah.
Seven, I've got a question on B, explain to me how you came up with 500 feet from a participating landowner building. That's about, means the house is within 300, and backyard's within about 340 feet from the road. I'm just curious what methodology or.
Mainly looking at what other counties' regulations were, so it was
What was the
based off of.
discussion on that? Was there consideration for more or less or what?
I don't know, Don, you call
It's
it.
550 feet
I mean,
for tower.
I mean, I think it was,
It's a 20-foot solar panel at 500 feet. I don't
I'm
know.
not worried about a solar panel falling over.
yeah,
Exactly, so it's still 500 foot away. So you can't have solar panels in this project within 500 foot of
the building,
Of a
a
panel,
building.
of a panel.
yeah.
And I noticed
They-
noise is separate. No, there's also a different one about noise, which is other sort of, if you're not, the only things I can think of with a solar panel personally would be the noise aspect and probably not falling on you, especially from 500 feet away, you're pretty safe from it. So I guess
Well,
that,
the noise can be solved by where the positioning of
and it's a
the
separate.
generation is concerned. That could be in the middle of the section.
Mhm.
Right.
We just didn't think that they need to be within 500 foot of a landowner's, building. We could be one closer or further.
Yeah, I don't think there
It
was,
just, there was no rhyme for reason, it's just, you know,
yeah, that's why I'm kind of struggling with that. I don't think there was any,
Because the notification is anybody within 1,000 feet,
yeah, there wasn't any,
any property.
they just didn't want.
It's a land-
1,000 feet is
Landowner.
property,
Yeah.
property line.
Mhm.
This is a
This is the
landowner's
building.
building.
And what are they permitted to put within 500 feet? Any of the things in a lease agreement? Or do we get to say, I don't want that battery complex within 500 feet of my place or my building? Or my
No, they
home?
can't put anything within
So-
500 foot.
So what I'm reading,
But what I'm getting at is
Batteries are 500 feet on page 26.9, batteries are 500 foot from a building, from a principal building.
that's
The solar panel would be 500 foot. So, this is.
that's what I'm getting at, but the thing you would need to remember, they are allowed to put a lot of stuff
Yes.
on and choose
That gives
a
us-
heck of a lot of things
Right.
beside the solar panel. You get to focusing so much on the solar panel, there are other far more dangerous things than the solar panels in this, that are allowed over here in the lease. But in our regulations, we're not separating what type of machinery. We're just giving the same distance, whether it's more dangerous or less dangerous. Yeah, there's some things you would not worry too much about being 500 feet. There are other things you darn sure wouldn't want to have within 500 feet of you. I'm just asking the simple question, what are we talking about here?
It's,
Are we making a distinction?
No, Don, you made a statement a minute ago, whatever part of the project is, 500 feet.
for any solar panel, the setbacks here are from any solar panel.
Yeah.
It's here.
And that's all
And then-
And
all it talks about is a solar
Well, then
panel.
below it says it's
The-
not a specific issue.
yes. The second sentence gives some ability to mitigate a site-specific issue.
Yeah.
So if there's some concern somewhere, identify where that may we can implement a greater setback.
And I think we've seen examples of that from that California fire. If you haven't followed any of the news, where the battery complex in California burnt forever, almost, for a long time. And the smoke off of that.
So we set a minimum standard that we want to see, and then as we get that site plan in and begin the staff review, planning commission review, and certainly this board review, if there's something that we feel like needs to be greater, that would give us the latitude to say 500 feet isn't enough in this particular case. We want to see 750. So you would have some latitude there to adjust that.
I think what they're asking though, this says solar panels, and there could be varied lines, there could be a shack, there could be battery storage, all that.
Well, I mean, any kind of building would just be meeting our standard setback requirement in the zoning regulations.
Which is not.
If it's which is not 500 foot. If it's battery storage, then it's gotta meet the 500 foot. If it's an operation center, it would just meet our standard setback requirement.
But it's far too dangerous to have something like that 500 feet from anybody's residence. And, but you're telling me we could change that in the permitting process later on.
In my
If
experience,
somebody is there to bring it to the attention and do something about it, and he's got the votes or he doesn't have the votes, and any list of things.
You talk about something different than the solar panels.
It is.
Well, like battery or
Yeah, okay,
electrical.
something different than the panels, because the panel
Yeah.
is 500 foot, yeah, okay.
in my experience with siting, if they want to put a battery or something controversial close to a non-participating landowner's house, meaning a person who has not leased their land for this project and they want to be close to them, I think we'd have a conversation with them about that not being a good site plan. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Now, if somebody's leased their land, if somebody's leased their land for solar and they have their residence close, then that's what they contract that.
He's made the decision for him and his family, what risk he's willing to take.
Mhm.
And I understand that, but I'm thinking about the guy next door who doesn't want it near his residence.
And I think that's very,
He's
something they.
gotta have some protections too.
Yeah.
Because the other guys decided everything be damned as long as I get $1 in my pocket. And that's fine. He can do that for himself, but he can't do it for me.
As we go along with this, I just have one, don't want to extend this process and if you have to, but one question, how do we come to consensus what Mark is gonna take back? Because I hear a lot of banter, a lot of stuff thrown out. What are we gaining, how are we gaining, it isn't up to one individual to make a change on this, that we don't have some kind of a, I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with you,
No,
I mean,
So far, I've wrote down one.
some of us have
one
read some
small
of these
change.
things you're saying in there, so that's why we probably ain't speaking up, we already seen it in there, and so I'm just saying.
But we are asking the questions to
Right.
know how it will be handled and before we pass anything.
I'm just saying, if we're making adjustments, I'm just curious.
So I think when we get done, I'm gonna read what I think the adjustments are that you
Okay,
said.
that's what I.
And-
Okay, I mean,
That's all I was asking, I wondered where we were actually going with it.
And obviously, nothing's decided tonight, so Don will
No, no,
make the
no.
adjustments, and then, because I always remind commissioners, you leave a meeting and sometimes you change your mind, but then at the actual meeting, we'll present maybe, Don will have to report what the potential adjustments are, and then you'll vote and see where you're at.
I want to say that I thought the planning commission did an excellent job. I thought they did a much thorough job regarding the land. But, on E, help me understand this. ETJ, the city holds the permit process for their ETJ. But yet we're saying, can that city then say, okay, I don't want this?
Yep.
Within a 3 mile or 1 mile or
They
whatever?
can say they want it or don't want it.
Yeah.
That's their decision.
Yeah, that's, I didn't quite read that. I see submit written correspondence indicating the city's desire to waive the 1 mile prohibition, but I didn't say anything else. So,
Yeah, they can waive the 1 mile.
but they can also say it's 3 miles like South Hutch. If
Whatever their
Free
ETJ
footage.
is, they have full control over
they
it.
have full control
Doesn't go
over their
through planning and
ETJ.
zoning.
Okay, that's good enough.
And they can say they don't want it if they don't.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
but I saw the minimum waive the 1 mile, but I didn't see the rest, so.
That's up to them. They can waive that.
Yeah.
As well, they speak for the ETJ. We don't.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Waive it if
not
they
what
want.
it said. That's not what it said.
Yeah, but no, but this is different than ETJ.
Yeah.
This isn't even,
I'm
even,
talking about
yeah,
ETJ.
yeah, E is saying, even if there isn't an ETJ, we're not gonna set it
Yeah.
closer to a
Right.
mile without permission.
Right.
If a city has ETJ, then we're not even involved at that point.
Exactly.
I just want clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
You ready for
Unless
mine?
somebody's got
I
something.
think they're on 8.
We're on 8.
Yeah.
Page 8.
I guess one of them on the battery energy storage systems that I thought about is when we put a storage unit up to store fuel, like around the Public Works Department down there where they store fuel, they have a containment, concrete containment around that facility.
Yeah, that's law.
And I think with batteries, that I think there should be a concrete barrier to contain contamination in case of a fire, just like fuel storage.
I mean, is that covered in these national standards or, I don't know what the standards are, to be honest with you, but it says, shall comply with requirements of national standards.
I don't know whether it is either, but I think if it's not covered, at least it should be stated.
Well, I think that the national standard probably making sure that it's safe for
Well, it says all applicable, local, state, and
Yeah.
federal.
federal regulations.
We don't know what those are.
Well, I mean, they
Did you
should
check into them, Mark?
We have like a summary doc. I haven't read the whole,
Say
it's
there
just
should
whole
be,
document.
It actually talks about battery storage and stuff, so.
should it say in there anything about a containment?
I didn't get
Well,
that far.
free.
I didn't get that far in the document, but again, I think we're gonna be relying on
This is
emergency
their-
management and what they are.
On the next
containment.
page, I'm just reading ahead. On the next page, it says the type of suppression system installed in the area of the battery energy system. So we do require them to identify their suppression system. And obviously, if we didn't think it was adequate, we really do, yeah, we definitely want as adequate, a good suppression system, because that would be terrible. I have no idea what that is, but we're gonna make them identify it and kind of prove to us that they have a good suppression system.
This is all part of the emergency management.
See, yeah.
input to
Right.
it.
Yeah.
I think that ought to be looked at from the standpoint of the concrete barrier around it with, you know, with some way to contain the suppression system. Cause if it's a PFAS or something like that, then that needs to be contained and not allowed to get into the dirt.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to be obnoxious, I'm looking at the safety factor in the future.
Well, not
Because-
just batteries, transformers. If you've
Yeah.
ever blown a transformer, the tar that comes out of them is toxic.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want those necessarily causing problems.
But guys, we're talking about a very large facility to do this. A lot of transformers, and you're correct. And there are statutes in place that we know of to take care of the transformer issue. These large battery or electrical storage systems using batteries are new enough, just as our discussion was, nobody knows whether they're regulated there. If they're not regulated there, and we don't regulate it or make the statement clear, then it's not regulated at all. Because we don't know what these regulations are, and it's a new enough deal that's coming up with these new energies that there's a good chance that the laws that are written aren't covering them because they're so new. So we really ought to check if there's a gap there or not, in my opinion. Could, how much of an effort would have to go into doing a check of what laws are set, or what would be the process, Patrick, or you?
Well, I talked to Adam and Travis between now and then because it's not my area of expertise and see, I see the point about making sure there's no secondary pollution from a suppression system.
At the same time, I think the battery storage should be located not 500 feet, but 1,000 feet or some other feet greater than 500 from the house, because just in case of that fire, you saw all that smoke and they vacated housing for a long distance around where that fire was.
Yeah, there's, you've got chemical issues in the air and,
Well, we just addressed that a little bit ago too.
That also was,
Design and permitting.
Also,
we want them to have it there.
would also help with the noise.
The noise from what?
In the United States, the primary national regulations for battery storage systems are primarily governed by the National Electric Code,
And that's it.
specifically Article 480,
On page
which
5.
outlines safety standards for stationary battery installations alongside additional regulations from OSHA regarding battery handling and spill containment, and the EPA for hazardous material and management related to battery disposal. All these standards are enforced at the state, local level, depending on the applicant's size and the battery storage system. So,
there's the answer.
Glad you're technical.
I mean, if it's covered, it's covered.
Yeah, it's covered under them. The ENFPA and the NEC and, yeah, I mean, I think it's already covered.
The conditional use permit should have a very detailed plan for the battery storage. Like that, it's not gonna be, that's not gonna be a little drawing where we're gonna put it over here, and that's gonna have details from an engineer, right? I mean, Don.
And the architect and
Yeah,
everybody.
I mean, that's got technical jargon out the
Yep.
wazoo
And
to
there's-
explain that it's,
We had no idea what all these things were, and evidently you all didn't either as a whole. So I just thought that was something we
Mm-hmm.
could bring up to look at, to make sure it's covered. Because you don't want any of the suppression liquid to get out on the ground with all the lithium batteries there. And it should be further away from the principal village of 500.
Well, actually, the water and these batteries don't go together at all. That's part of why they blow up. It's a runaway, they can't cool themselves, and it's a runaway situation.
So
So,
you're on 9 now?
well, we're pretty much on the bottom of the others. And
Yeah.
we're still discussing batteries here on 9, top of 9, and signage and.
Yeah, here's some of the guidelines. Spill containment, battery storage areas must have proper containment systems to capture any battery um, acids or other materials. Ventilation, adequate ventilation is necessary to prevent gas buildup from batteries. Labeling and signage, all that has to be done so if a fire truck shows up, they know safety, what you have out there. Emergency response plans, so that'll all be covered with that from the fire system and stuff. Location and separation, battery storage areas should be located away from flammable materials and properly separated based on battery types. So they'll know, like I said, when they do the plan, they'll know how safe they need to be in.
As long as there's a containment facility.
Yep, but it is required, so, by those guidelines that they just posted. So.
500 feet far enough away from a battery? Myself, I don't think so.
No.
But this is, you tell us this is the minimum and we can make it greater in the cycle.
Yeah, you can make it greater, or we can change the regulation if you want to change the distance. Just change the regulation right now.
What distance do you want it?
Well,
What number, what number?
500 ain't too close for panels, I mean, I get that, they already said 30 minutes ago if you came.
Batteries.
So,
We're talking about the battery storage facility.
when that comes.
So Don's asking, do we change it right here on this document or do we do it later?
No,
I would do it now,
I wanna hear what you wanna do now.
yeah.
I'm gonna say 1,000 feet, let somebody
You're
else
talking
speak
about
up.
battery storage, not
Battery
panels.
storage,
Not panels.
Not panels.
Storage.
Panels,
Storage.
I don't, I'm
Not battery storage either. There are places in our meetings that it came up on traditional battery storage that are recycling batteries. And they got very upset with that type of wording. We're talking about energy storage systems
Batteries.
Yeah,
with,
Yeah.
with,
it could be worded that way,
proper terms, huh?
yeah.
well, like I said, there's certain people in the business that were at our meetings.
We're not
Yeah,
talking about a
we're-
car battery though.
It's not.
Well, I mean,
Unless they decide to use car battery.
Yeah.
It's not that battery energy storage system.
4,000-pound batteries.
Yeah.
That's for sure, yeah. Yeah. to do it.
So the battery
Yeah.
storage,
This is me.
it stores the energy from
Yeah.
the system.
Oh, yeah.
That's 1,000 foot from a,
From a structure.
Non-participating,
Or any principal building. This says any principal building,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
not
I'm
non.
more concerned about
This
Yeah.
is principal, not non-principal.
All right.
I am as well, because you could end up in a fight with a participating landowner who's mad at you for putting them too far back, and that would be an awkward place to put us if that were to happen.
He's agreeing to,
He's agreeing to it, and we're telling him we can't. I don't really.
this
think
would be
that-
a non-participating as far as my terminology would go, because
What if you have, now this is a dumb scenario, have 1,000 foot setback on a particular parcel of ground they're gonna put it on, and that puts it right up next to something that's very flammable, because you don't want it next to a building. And then you start a fire that way if something, I mean, I think it ought to be on a case-by-case basis with some logic.
The applicant has to, you're right, that's what the site plan is for. The applicant has to
Yeah,
show us
we
the
could-
plan, and it has to make sense, and then we make sure.
We
it
could
gets
check
signed.
if we want.
Yeah, I know I'm agreeing with you.
if you're doing 1,200 acres or even a section, that's 5,280 feet, basically.
I think they could
Surely
find a place
somewhere
that
in
could,
that
Yeah.
section, you can find a place that is away from wherever it needs to be.
See, on this 500 foot, it's a 500 foot minimum. When they have their plan and show it to us and we see that that's too close, it can be, you can exceed the 500 foot, it just can't be any closer than.
yeah, the minimum five,
I think you need to specify, because,
minimum of 1,000.
yeah, I really think it. We specified
Could you
everything
specify
else.
1,000 unless deemed by those that are gonna review it, it'd be a better location, cause I mean, you could run into a snafu there too.
I don't know, when you're dealing with an architect or a planner, they're gonna know they're not designing these solar systems, or solar systems just out of the blue. They probably have done a few of them, so.
But as written, 500 is the minimum, but they still have to give us a site plan that has to be reviewed, that has to be
Yeah, approved. Yeah.
Right.
Why not set it to start with?
Okay, what is this 1,000 foot away from what?
Non-participating homeowner, just like the 500 feet is.
Non-participating primary residence or non-participating?
Primary residence.
Okay, non-participating primary residence.
Principal
Okay.
building is what you-
Yeah.
Just the same type
So
of
is-
terminology
Yeah,
used
that's-
on,
Is there a distinction then?
on away from the.
1,000 from a non-participating and then
Primary residence.
principal building.
and then what about
This is bad.
participating? What about
Participating,
I don't want to interfere with somebody's private decisions, okay?
So we're just talking about that and then it's on
How flexible is that? In my situation, if it shoves it somewhere in a peninsula ground where it puts it in a more dangerous area, we're gonna have to have some.
then we're not gonna,
Yeah.
we're gonna not.
yeah, we wouldn't approve stuff like that. So there's some there is some
It was all
flexibility there.
covered in a conditional anyways.
Yeah.
This is really irrelevant.
So this is no closer than 1,000 foot from a non-participating primary residence.
Principal building, not primary residence.
I want to be consistent.
Yeah.
He did, but he did, but
He did
I want to be consistent with what we're calling.
Yeah.
Right.
That was what I was missing.
Building residence, same thing.
That's all.
You're saying you ought to use the same wording all through.
Yeah, we,
Principal,
right.
principal building,
Principal building.
just for.
which would be the
consistency.
resident.
It is the
Which is
same
what they
thing,
leave.
yes.
Yes,
It is the same
yes.
thing, but I just wanted to.
And and you wanna keep the wording consistent.
That's,
That's
one
what
of
I
the goals is
think.
to do that.
I can understand that.
You end up interpreting these things 10 years later and it's different people.
So a
Nobody
principal
knows.
building is what they're living in,
Right.
okay?
Different than the principal's office.
Yeah, been there.
We've all been there. Maybe.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I got my day there.
But I would guess you're right.
Probably a good idea on 9A. I mean, and we're keeping that from the nearest outer wall. Sounds reasonable. The only thing I would look at or wonder about is in cases like this, how do we enforce it? How do we know they're actually
doing that?
Guess if you have a complaint, somebody can go out with the dB meter and see.
That's what I'm getting.
See what the,
We just can't do that, though. We have to hire someone.
oh, I know, I'm just
professional.
saying, but if somebody complained, we can bring it up.
Bring
That's-
a professional in.
Yeah.
If they had a noise complaint, thinking
Yeah.
it was higher, to have a way to verify it's what I'm getting.
Yeah, we
at.
just have to,
Or-
like
or
you said,
verify
hire.
they're legal, or if they're under 60, that's what's permitted, it's a done deal. If you're over, you correct the situation.
If I may, Commissioner, I was gonna next week suggest a change to that, because the way it's written, I don't believe it makes sense. Don and I review this, and we need to make a change to that third sentence toward the end, where it's gonna start out with 60 decibels, and then as measured from the nearest solar facility equipment to the outer wall of any landowner's principal building. The way it's written, we missed it. We've read this document so many times, we just ended up missing that, and so we wanted to make
Good, just.
what we want to say is from the equipment to the outer wall of the
The neighbor.
the principal building, it can't be more than 60 dBA.
Good enough.
So that's one change that we missed at the planning commission level and when we reviewed this document.
Well, every time you read something, you see something new.
I know, that's very true.
Well, I like C here. They're talking about measuring non-audible noises, which is a good deal to do. Because they do
Yeah.
cause certain people health problems and by measuring them, and that's something in the wind was never talked about. That's a good deal, whoever came up with that. Okay, 10A. I noticed when I attended the meeting that one of the planning and zoning members asked, is it a problem and why are we talking about it? Alls I'd say is I've seen some documents that you sign when you're leasing that included these same things, and anybody signing could not sue the company for these problems, which tells me that if it's important enough to include that in there, it's important enough to include it here, so I'm glad it's included. I just want to read it closely because I know at least on the wind, when I've talked to people who've worked under them, there are problems with this. And the thing you want to remember, if we lose our satellite communication, that is our internet connection in a lot of these places. It's also how GPS works. If we lose that, if we lose GPS, we lose all, we lose a lot of the way we farm right now. GPS operated planters and stuff, if they're interfering, we're not working and can't work. Spray equipment, fertilizer equipment that's
That's all covered in here, Don.
There again, the question was asked the other night, if it's covered, and then we can make a complaint. How do we get compliance? And how do we get compliance almost immediately? Because every day you've got, or every hour you've got equipment, this kind of equipment down, it can get in your pocket real fast and cost a lot of money. So who do we contact if we have a problem? Is that covered somewhere?
Yeah, the FCC covers it. They have regulations, and whoever's doing the plan, they're going to have to know what their equipment's putting out, because they just can't stick something out there that sends out radio signals that are going to jam your satellite.
And in the development agreement, we can put in and make sure we know who to call. We can put in the time period that they have to respond, as well as any fines.
And
Correct, Don?
Right,
Mark?
yes, yeah.
so we've
Probably-
got the ability to do that,
It would start out with-
which we need. I mean,
Yeah. It says that the applicant shall take the timely measures necessary to eliminate the interference. So, but
We can specify that in the
But yeah, you
development
can-
agreement.
Yeah,
But
it would
yeah.
start out with me again, and then I would have the contact for the project, and then I think it could also be emphasized in the development plan that this board would create as well.
well, we know they have microwave because that's how they communicate with their facilities. I've lived under a microwave tower a mile from it, and it completely ruined our satellite stuff, just about once a month. And
I think we're concerned.
Bell Telephone would have, so I mean, there's gotta be, if we've got a way to address it, like you're saying, then we're okay, because it is a problem.
So that we don't say this more, I changed something I really didn't like. It's not a development agreement, it's a development plan. The development plan has nothing to do with the developer agreeing to it or not. So it's a plan. So the developer doesn't have to agree with your plan. They can just not like it, not
say
have.
no.
Don't have to sign it.
It's the plan,
We're
it's
not
not
doing it.
So I had that stricken out of it,
that's a good deal.
That's good.
so that nobody's confused.
That sounds
Item
good.
7 underneath there.
Where are we at?
Oh, I'm team.
A7,
Still on
I
that?
think you should add FCS and Soil Conservation Service to that. And the reason I say that, because if I remember correctly, we as farmers don't have the arbitration to change a wetland. We cannot change a wetland. Can't say, okay, I'm gonna move this wetland over to here. We can't disturb that wetland.
All right.
So why should a corporation be allowed to do that?
It shouldn't be.
They shouldn't.
Mm-mm. Oh,
Not unless this ones you just said you can.
yeah. The federal government.
Right, right.
They usually
But I
tell you
mean,
where you can't.
That's just something that, I suppose if you weren't involved today, you might not know that, or
Right,
in that situation
Exactly.
come about. So
right.
that was,
That's a good idea.
that's why I wanted those 2 days added to that. So that- why I would suggest that.
Yep, that's,
What's in it here?
If I get stuck enough, we'd get a tree out of the
7.
river area.
Where if you have a pool, they go, that's wetland.
And I'll tell you what, depends on who happens to be there at the time. Had wet, non-disturbance of wetlands, and everybody was in agreement that we hadn't, and you get 6 years down the line and you got a new bunch of individuals that wanna bring it back up again. And, so those are moving targets, I'll say that. Depending on who's in authority at the time. You guys who are more familiar, this B down here, are they required in a lot of these kind of situations?
For the erosion
Applicant shall
control.
obtain an erosion control permit, are they, is that
If it's
kind of
disturb-
standard?
More than, if you disturb more than an acre of land. Yeah, yep.
Okay.
On 611?
Yeah, it looks like it.
11B. We can't build in a floodplain, so why are you gonna allow that, a corporation to build in a floodplain?
12.
Is that, am I interpreting that correct?
Which one? On
D.
12,
D.
12.
Top, is what
Can't
I
build
think.
a
Is it-
Page
isn't that-
2611,
You can build it. Start in a floodplain.
huh?
You can construct buildings in the floodplain.
You put a septic system in the floodplain.
Yeah.
You just, it's gotta be.
There has to be
Yeah,
measures.
that's
for
be
it.
measured for it. Yeah.
But
What we're excluding is development in a floodway, which is a part of a floodplain in letter C, but we allow buildings and, like Ron said, septic systems in the floodplain with proper permits. And so we did not want to exclude a solar facility from being put in the floodplain. It's not advisable, but if they want to do that, they can. So, yeah,
You build a house in the floodplain.
build a house, you can put sheds and barns.
I've heard county engineers say that the panel's probably not a big deal because it's just raised up, it's just.
Yeah.
Depends what they're doing.
It's mainly, the biggest concern would be the electrical end of
Mhm,
things, to make sure that that's adequately what we call flood-proofed stuff, so. But yeah, the panels themselves are gonna be elevated high enough, so that's not gonna be an issue.
But usually by the time you, get the cost, you go to higher ground.
Right.
I think that's the way to do
they
it.
do with septic system.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of a situation I heard about from a friend that had problems in that area with planning and zoning.
Usually it's people that build without a permit and haven't talked to us.
Yes. I don't know,
Okay.
yeah,
It's fine.
okay.
I mean, Ron, there's things you have to do to build a house in a floodplain. You can't just go out there and just build it and cause a problem with flooding water. But solar panels on a pipe would be like
Yeah, I'm
a
not
fence.
concerned about that. It was a building structure.
That's,
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that takes some more
water
regular.
flows around pipes.
When you build it on the flat ground, you might have a little trouble getting insurance.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting to the bottom.
Yeah, it's nice.
We're on 12, aren't we?
Man,
So number 2 here at the top. They're including us as an additional insured on general liability. It's number 1, what was it all? No, I read it. This decommission plan. So anything we would want to include, like on recycling of various panels, batteries, whatever is associated here, we would need to specifically do that in this
Yes.
plan.
Right. Yep.
And what are we calling that?
The regulations are just requiring the decommissioning. The specifics of that will be generated by this board.
so the decommissioning plan is a part of the development plan.
Yes. It's called out in the regulations a couple of times to make sure that it's known that, yes, you will do a decommission plan with your development plan.
And that's where we can demand money to be put away so it'll be there
Maybe I'll.
for the decommissioning. Because in oil and gas,
Yes.
they figured
yes.
out legal ways to get around
Yeah.
the decommissioning
See,
requirements by the state of Kansas.
security of some kind, some form of security that proves that there's money that we can access to clean it up for them. If they don't follow the decommissioning plan and then we have the access to security to money to do it as written for them and take the money and do it. So yeah,
And you
that'll all
provide
be
in
spelled
there
out.
Or that raises a percent or whatever annually or whatever you want to do, so it's covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, inflation goes on and
Oh, but that's also, like he said, if somebody just leaves,
Yeah, it's
it's abandoned,
Right.
then we need to have a way to pay to get it
And you
cleaned
have
up.
that money.
usually it's based on an estimate from an engineer on what it would cost to decommission to carry out, and then if you need to adjust it during the lifetime, you can say, hey, you can have your engineer check, hey, what would it cost, today to do it? So you just adjust it as needed.
we should require that it's checked into at least every
We
10
didn't make that part of
years.
the plan.
Yeah, every,
We like that in the
every
plan.
5 years,
Yeah,
10 years, it's
whatever it is,
reviewed.
we just make sure we
Because
cover it.
inflation goes on and pretty soon,
You can write
Well,
that, you can write that in the decommissioning
Yes.
agreement, like a certain percent each year to go up. In fact,
you're
there's a
taking notes,
really good
aren't you,
article.
Patrick? So you
I
can
have
get us to
some-
write that, right?
I have strong feelings about decommissioning plans because I always think of what could go wrong, and one of the things that could, you always if a project goes well, it's easy to see what went right. if it goes badly, it would be something related to a bad decommissioning. So those are the kind of things I will worry about if we ever get an application.
There's a really good, another example to look at for decommissioning from the Center for Rural Affairs, out of Virginia, 1920 or 2022. It's another one besides the good one you gave us.
Well, I know of an event or something that happened with my old employer. He bought some property on C and Maple, and it used to have an old mill there, and it had a railroad track that went through there, and they had looked like a tank car, and it had black around it. We didn't open it up. We didn't want to see. And so when he bought it from the city, he said, I'll buy it with one stipulation. When I'm ready for that tank to be gone, because it was right next to the creek, you guys will have to remove it, and any environmental things that have to be done, you'll take care of. And so they agreed to it. It was, I think he gave him 5 years, and then he said, okay, I need it gone because we need more land. But yeah, so you definitely want to cover your CYA with having that money there so you can take care of it.
Absolutely.
Basically, the same thing we went through.
Would you like to elaborate on the CYA?
I think everybody knows.
Is that anterior?
We've gotten off at 12 already. Didn't we care about 112?
1612 where was that? Are you guys doing that?
Yeah, he's doing.
Okay.
Just,
You just let us know when you want us to flip the page.
no, you're fine. Go ahead. I'll get there.
No.
I've just learned what.
Well, then you ask a question, we gotta go back to 12.
Well, that's a problem.
13.
Oh, yeah.
Well, whatever with maybe.
Party's about over.
I've only got one thing on 13. Whenever you're ready. Item 7, last sentence. I think, what about adding the word clean up daily and upon completion? I don't think we want stuff blowing around every night or week or until they get done. Any problem with adding, dispose of it daily and upon completion?
Probably not. It's not an issue, maybe just on the, well, I was on the enforcement in a little bit, but, it doesn't hurt to have it in there,
I just think of the stuff I get in my field
right?
from being out across, not far from
From a-
landfill.
From a light wind, not like we're having today.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
I just
yeah,
thought about that, but
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah, I hired a contractor and he cleans up every day. You can't tell he's been there. Other than the new stuff that's on.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good idea. We had a house constructed near one of our farms and I'm still picking up plywood.
Yep, nope.
That went rolling across, but he just never took the time to secure or do anything
if
on
you
it.
got a hay field, if you got a hay field out there and you're ready to put up hay, you don't want that kind of field.
Well, you don't wanna run over it with
Any
your
more?
implement.
Any more than possible.
No.
Construction or
Well,
completion.
just go ahead.
During, it's during construction too, completion, that could change that. See what I'm saying?
the
You
completion.
can't just say completion.
Say, except just upon completion.
Suppose so.
There's the one daily, you know.
Dispose of it daily and upon,
Daily during construction
Good people will do it anyway.
and upon completion of the solar energy facility.
that's what, dispose of it daily and upon completion. That's what I have.
Or end up on, whatever.
Okay.
That's the big one.
Okay. Yeah, read back some children.
We're done? I guess.
Okay, so to start with, I have 26-2 and I have 12 circled. What did you want there, Ron? What was that? What was that question? 26-2, 12. I have that circled. What was that discussion?
On the principal building.
You already get, just
Okay.
clarification
Okay.
of, this,
Good.
where the C-Lex was, that was all.
Okay, I want to cover everything. So, I got 26-5. I got 26-107, that letter needs to be a certified letter.
Yep.
And also down on 3, I have a written document from the Kansas Department of Transportation, that's proof of that, okay? So they have to provide proof of that. That what you said, agreed to?
Where you at now?
26-5.
H funds.
Page 26, I'm sorry, page 26-5, 26-107, on number 2, I got certified letter. You want that as certified letter sent out. And then
That's
on
what I
th-
would suggest.
Okay, that's fine. And then on 3, it's the proof that they have proof. That's been reviewed, okay? Then we're gonna go to on page 26-8, I have 8 circled. What was that? Did that get resolved?
That was discussing, I don't know if we got resolved, we were talking about suppression system being in concrete or something to avoid pollution. And I think
Concrete.
Containment.
containment, yeah, from suppression. I think we kind of, I don't know if we came up with language or we just need to.
Well, I
We,
think that
we
was covered
determined
by-
it was covered
Covered in
by
the
the
right,
state.
yeah, that's the regs that we referenced should cover that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
covered by the.
it was covered already.
Not covered in there.
And we have the ability to require that as part of the CP in our other language.
Okay, so we good?
Yes.
No change there.
Yep.
Okay, then on page 26-9, it's 1,000 foot for battery storage from a non-participating building. Primary building.
Yeah.
Okay, you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay, then I've got on page 2610, on 11, and go down to 7A7, C, SCF, and soil conservation. They need to be on
SCS,
SCS.
Soil Conservation Service.
Got it? You agree with that? Okay. And then on page 2613, cleaning up daily.
Yep.
And that is it. Now, you can speak if you want. Those all, to me, were pretty minor changes that doesn't have to go back to the planning and zoning commission. You agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think there's nothing majorly conceptual change from what we had, in my opinion. But it's the board's decision how you want to handle that.
So if it doesn't go back to the planning and zoning commission, and we make these minor changes, and then a new draft, that's what you're gonna receive on March 12th,
Sounds good.
with just these changes we just discussed.
I'm good with that.
If it gets approved, it's done.
Yeah.
Because I think any major changes, it would need to go back to planning and zoning, but I don't think any of these are major
I
changes.
just think we need to send it back to them again.
I don't.
As long as the planner doesn't. You agree with that?
You gonna let me talk?
He told me.
I tell you what, I can't speak for the other 6 members, but just from what I've observed tonight, I do not, me personally as a chair, I do not see any problem.
Okay, well, the planner doesn't think so, and the director doesn't think so, and the chair doesn't think so, so we're good.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked him, because he told me I couldn't.
So now are we going to go to the resolution and discuss that? What that means, so you know what that means?
Well, I think it'd be appropriate while
Okay.
we're doing we're doing the study on what's.
Yep. So the resolution. You want to describe it?
No, go ahead. I'm gonna chime in.
Okay.
You got your thoughts.
So all the resolution is ideas at this point from the Planning and Zoning Commission for what you can use or not use, but highly suggested suggestions in creating the development plan. And so we made this a resolution so that it's a tool for you to use and that you can add to or take away from, use or not use, and build upon. And the reason that I and we did not want this to be part of the regulations is because it ties the county commission to have to go by this. And you're the one creating the development agreement, so it should be you creating it, and it should not be a part of the regulations. It's a part of the development agreement, which is both the development agreement and the decommissioning agreement. And these are just suggestions. And with because if these was a part of the regulations, then to change any of this, you'd have to go back through the Planning and Zoning Commission with a public hearing just to change your thoughts for a development agreement. In this case, you just amend them.
Sounds good
It's
to
just
me.
a tool for you to use and add to. And when it's time to create the development agreement, which whenever you want to start working on that, this is a tool, it's a resolution.
This is something that when it comes to developing that agreement, that you're gonna say, well, that can be said that it's in resolution 2025-1, so we have to do it.
If it's in a resolution, and if it's in a regulation, if it's in the record,
No,
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 you can-
not in this.
I mean, this is not something we have to go by.
No,
no.
no,
You
it's a
can-
tool.
You can do all of it, some of it, or none of it. It's
Add
just-
to it, take
These
away.
are, these are ideas, suggestions, like Don said, that
Flexible.
And
these are things that the planning commission believe are important in any kind of development plan.
And Don, this is, yeah, you're calling it a plan.
It's a.
I called it an agreement earlier, you just did. It's hard to
I
get
know.
away from the old
I
language.
know, I'm the one that ended up doing
Yeah, I
it. And I'm still saying it.
But
Well, I mean, that's what it's been referred to for years, or, you know, but
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I'm saying I'm glad I'm not the only one.
but the reason we did this, again, as a resolution, if it's in the regulations, you're tied to them. You don't need to be tied to what you're gonna create.
right.
Then
You just-
why do we need to make it in a resolution form? Why can't it not be just suggestions from the planning commission to the Board of County Commissioners?
When
Why
this,
does it have to be in a resolution form? It sounds awful formal here to me,
I'll,
rather than just suggestions to develop a development agreement.
I'll try to answer that. So when it's in a resolution, you guys can chime in, whatever. When it's in a resolution, if a developer comes and they ask for a permit, or, to go through the process, they're gonna see a copy of this. They're gonna know what's up, at least this, at the minimum, they're gonna have to deal with. So they're gonna get to see this too, so that they can be prepared to what you guys are gonna be asking for. That's why you need to build on this or whatever until it comes, because you may not get one of these for years. You may change and add to this, but when it's a resolution, then it's a legal document that is actually a part of this, but not a regulation. But the developer will get to see this. Now, we could just,
But it's
you're suggesting just writing it on a piece of paper and handing it to you. But this doesn't go away.
That's fine, but why not? But not limited to be part of this.
I don't think it is
Oh, you're not.
limiting us.
It's not.
It's
He's saying
not
that,
at all.
that is just some guidelines.
This is just suggestions. You can
I
use them, not use them,
realize
add
that.
to it.
I realize that, but it says may,
You may use them or
County
not.
commissioner.
The county commission.
but in this may, it doesn't say we could add to it or anything. It just says may consider. And maybe I'm just being.
This
too
is not a
particular.
formal resolution, this is just a guideline.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote on it, aren't we?
It's a formal planning commission resolution.
Yeah.
These are topics that they believe are important, but
This
You
is
can
nothing
add to it?
you're
I'm
not
just trying to
voting-
get around.
You guys,
Yeah.
you're not voting on.
You're not voting
Yeah.
on this.
This,
Oh,
this is
no.
their,
I,
yeah, that's the
yeah.
confusion.
But I,
You're not voting
No,
on
I
that.
didn't realize. that.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is in the
Just
vote.
On what we can.
This is just,
So,
this is just a tool.
Yeah.
You're not
Okay.
voting on
No.
this. You'll be voting on the regulations,
That's fine.
not this.
Sorry,
That's
yeah.
fine.
I was gonna go there, yeah, but this isn't something that this board is going to vote on next week. But it's an important component of what's contained in here.
I understand.
Of course, our suggestions, the major contributor here is gonna be sitting in the corner of
Well,
it, putting that together for us.
I really like that they had, it's a well thought
Yeah.
out idea of, because
It is.
there are, yeah, and if I was involved, I would use it as a checklist and then you try and think of what haven't we thought of, which is always impossible to do, but no, it's a good
And
document.
it's-
I would think when you're ready to start creating a development agreement, that you guys, so a part of that, you're gonna have before staff here, you're gonna have all the recommendations for suggestions from the planning and zoning commission, and they can add to this on and on if they want to.
Sorry, I mistook it.
Okay,
Okay.
so
We were gonna bring.
Yeah,
that.
no, you weren't gonna, yeah, you're not voting on this next week potentially.
I was gonna say, too, the planning agreement is project and site specific, so you can get all the ideas of what might be important, but until you see what someone's proposing to do and where they're doing it and what they wanna do, it's very difficult to be exact.
that's why this
Yeah,
this
so
could
it's
very
like-
possibly change,
Mhm.
and that's why you don't want it a regulation.
I understand.
Yeah.
you guys don't need your hands tied when you're creating the development plan. And so that's why it's a resolution. Is that it?
That's it.
I do have a question on another piece of equipment you gave me, and this is if we got,
That, the other,
Supplementary.
the other text amendment, or,
the supplementary use regulations, prohibited uses.
yes? This is the other document with the prohibition.
Oh,
One and two, I thought, no mobile home or non-compliant manufactured home, and maybe this is something we can go over, not have to do it, okay? Is that the way?
These aren't subject to we're just looking at number 8. The text amendment will be number 8, and so the other prohibited uses are not part of your approval next week either. All you're looking at is adding 15.111.8 to the regulations. 1 and 2 are already in the regulations and adopted.
I think that's something they need to look at, because aren't you, prohibiting? No mobile home, or, I understand non-compliant manufactured home, because there's some old ones that don't follow the new rule.
Yes. In the zoned area of the county, we are prohibiting any mobile home that is older than 1994 in the zoned area of the county. Out west, we don't care.
It's not new. It's-
But,
It's always that one. yeah.
That's not a
Yeah.
new regulation. That's
It's not a new regulation.
I know, but,
So,
yeah,
so
I
what's,
just.
what's that do to somebody who's got one of those and living in it?
That's considered a non-compliant manufactured home and it's perfectly fine with the regulations.
Until,
If they want to change it out, then it has to be 1994 or newer.
We'll visit further about two, okay? I don't wanna take everybody's time here.
I don't know, we got off solar, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm joking.
I was done.
Do it tonight.
So, but
I'm looking after Randy, he looks sleepy.
No, I'm fine. It's been a long day. I'm fine.
So,
or the other ones.
so,
yeah, we need to talk about the prohibition
yes, that's what I was getting.
within the Muniscal watershed of the zoned area of the county. And, yeah, you guys, you all had a map of that, didn't you? And where I zigzagged out so it could actually mean something instead of a circle, so that it could be described in case it was ever happened. So, planning and zoning commission,
Yes,
yeah, so the
Yes.
planning and zoning,
it was referred back, remember? You mean,
it was referred back because you wanted this map created, I think, with me
It was-
making the lines, right?
now, the original proposal, the original request from this board was to prohibit
Prohibited.
commercial solar in the zone area of the county. The Planning Commission denied that request. This board referred that back and asked the Planning Commission, would you consider prohibition in the Muniscal watershed?
And they did.
Planning Commission reviewed that request and said, yes, we would consider prohibition. They approved that request. We created a subsequent map, took that to the Planning Commission as well. They agreed to that map. And so that request is coming back before this board next Wednesday.
So you'll receive, if you approve this map.
And the prohibition in the watershed. And so the text amendment that goes along with that map is Article 15.111, number 8, which essentially, there's a lot of fancy terms, but essentially it prohibits commercial solar in the watershed, in the zoned area, the fully zoned area of the county. Doesn't do anything out west.
That's a different subject.
Well, it's still,
It's still part
it's
of
still solar.
So what they're saying is that this whole blue area is gonna be,
No.
No,
Here's the zoned area, and see, I made these marks so they could be surveyed. And so it will be, if you agree, it will be prohibited in this area
it's on
here.
this red line.
Yeah. this zaggy line and all this within the zoned area of the county.
And
Everything
minimum
inside
zone,
the
the watershed.
Not over.
The city of West.
Yeah.
Yes, areas are already
Yeah.
cities.
Well, yeah, but I've not heard one.
The build one.
Watershed area, I mean, I've heard any knowledge about that.
A lot less.
Yeah.
We've got one of these maps on the door.
I don't know if I have the current one.
See the lines there within the circle? That's the
Yeah.
area that would be prohibited in, because I could not get outside of the Ninscal watershed, or I could not get outside of
Out of the
anything
zone.
that's, yeah.
That's outside the zoned area.
Exactly, so that's why some of it's within that circle. 'Cause we're not talking about anything in the unzoned area of the county.
Well, and then you said we'll vote to accept the map and then at the same time
Prohibited in
prohibit it there.
that area.
Approve, potentially approve of the text amendment that would be what this board's original or direction was to the planning commission.
Okay, so we'll handle this, and the other. It'll be 3 deals. Patrick, guys, who get it wrote down. so-
Regulations.
Regulations.
Actually, there would be a third, the third one would probably be, we'll remove the rest of the, I'm losing my words, the prohibition, not the prohibition, what are we calling it, sorry, the
Moratorium.
moratorium, yeah, cause it'll be
At least in
done
the zoned area.
in the zone, well,
Zoned area, not out west unless they were.
I guess we could, we'll do that, we'll leave it in the west for a little while and see what actually happens, but we can't leave it in the west forever.
Right.
When's it run out?
May first.
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 But if you get this passed, it doesn't need to go to May first.
That would be plenty.
No, I meant-
We-
Tipped out.
So we'd still have
Except
to
for out
extend
west.
to the west,
Except for out west.
leave it till May first.
I think we leave it to May, I think if we get all this much done, we leave it for that meeting. And then we'll have to, but you'll have to make a decision before May first if you really wanna get serious about trying to do something in the West County. But let's get through next Wednesday, cause this is plenty of heavy lifting.
There's plenty to, right.
Yeah.
We can't finish everything at once, come on.
That would be government efficiency.
Yeah.
We don't have the.
Efficient government.
I tried to get Mark to do that, he said no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So is everybody good with the change?
Question?
Back with you?
Yep.
Everybody's happy?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, first time ever, right?
Alright,
I gotta get up before you change them.
yeah, I was gonna say, that's time to end the meeting. Thank you.
Well, I'd say our study rate,
Huh?
Guy.